Goliath, the formidable giant from the Bible, is one of the most famous figures in biblical history, known for his overwhelming size and strength. According to 1 Samuel 17:4, Goliath was a warrior from the Philistine city of Gath, standing an astonishing height of nearly 9 feet 9 inches, or approximately 2.97 meters tall. To truly grasp the significance of his size, one must understand the measurements used during that time, such as cubits and spans, which differ from today's units of feet and inches. However, even with these differences, it is clear that Goliath was a giant by any standard. His physical presence alone was enough to send waves of fear throughout the Israelite army. Goliath's stature wasn't his only weapon. His armor was designed to intimidate and protect him against the best efforts of any opponent. The Bible describes him wearing a bronze helmet and a suit of armor made of overlapping metal plates, which weighed over 125 pounds, about 56 kilograms. This suit was no ordinary armor. It was a heavy, formidable piece of equipment, made to withstand the force of any weapon that might strike him. In addition to his armor, Goliath wore bronze greaves on his legs and carried a massive bronze spear, whose shaft was likened to a weaver's beam, an incredibly sturdy, thick piece of wood. The spearhead itself weighed around 15 pounds, 8 kilograms, making it a fearsome weapon in his hands. To further add to his defense, Goliath had a shield bearer, someone walking ahead of him to protect him from attacks, making him an even more intimidating figure. When Goliath stepped onto the battlefield, he didn't just challenge the Israelites to a fight. He taunted them, trying to break their spirits before the battle even began. His challenge was straightforward: send out a man to fight me, and if he wins, the Philistines will serve the Israelites. But if I win, the Israelites will become our servants. This was no ordinary challenge. It wasn't just about physical combat. It was a psychological warfare, meant to make the Israelite soldiers doubt their own strength. Every day, for 40 days, Goliath marched out to the valley, issuing his challenge in front of the entire Israelite army, causing fear to spread among them. Standing in stark contrast to Goliath's massive presence was the young David, a shepherd boy, who would later go on to defeat him. David had no experience as a soldier, nor did he possess any of the impressive weapons or armor Goliath had. Yet, it was his faith in God, rather than his physical abilities, that ultimately led to Goliath's downfall. Goliath, with all his strength and size, was brought low by a young man with only a sling and a stone, showing that physical might is no match for the power of faith and divine intervention. Goliath's challenge to the Israelite army was not just a typical call to battle. It was a psychological weapon meant to break the spirit of the entire nation. For 40 days, morning and evening, Goliath stood in the valley between the two armies, issuing the same taunting challenge to the Israelites. He mocked their courage and questioned their honor, daring them to send out a warrior to face him one-on-one. "Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me," Goliath demanded, his voice booming across the valley. He then made the stakes clear. If he were defeated, the Philistines would become the servants of Israel, but if he won, the Israelites would serve the Philistines. This was no ordinary challenge. It was a psychological game meant to instill fear in the hearts of the Israelites. Goliath knew that the size and power he possessed were enough to intimidate anyone who faced him. He had been a warrior since his youth, and he was confident that no one could match him. His towering presence and fearsome armor, weighing over 200 pounds, only added to the terror he instilled in his enemies. It was a battle not only of strength, but also of willpower, and for 40 days, the Israelite soldiers cowered in fear, too intimidated to answer Goliath's challenge. Every day, Goliath appeared before the Israelite army, shouting his challenge, and every day, the Israelites ran and hid. The soldiers saw Goliath as an unbeatable foe, and his consistent appearance each morning and evening only reinforced their belief that no one could defeat him. Fear gripped the hearts of the Israelites, leaving them paralyzed and unable to take action. Goliath's constant taunting served as a reminder that he was a champion, undefeated in battle, and no one was brave enough to face him. It was during these 40 days of intimidation that David, a young shepherd, entered the scene. He was not a soldier and had no experience in battle. David's mission was simple: deliver supplies to his brothers who were serving in Saul's army. When he arrived at the camp, he overheard Goliath's challenge and saw the fear in the eyes of the soldiers. Unlike the others, David was not intimidated by Goliath's size or threats. Instead, he was angered that anyone, especially a Philistine, would mock the God of Israel and defy his army. David's response was simple but powerful. He boldly declared that he would take on Goliath, believing that God would give him the strength to defeat the giant. While the Israelite army trembled, David stepped forward, driven by his faith in God rather than fear. His willingness to face Goliath marked a turning point in the story, a young boy willing to challenge the mighty warrior, showing that faith in God could overcome even the greatest of fears. David's entrance into the story of Goliath is a powerful example of courage rooted in faith, not physical strength. While the entire Israelite army cowered in fear at the thought of facing the giant, David, a young shepherd boy, stepped forward with a boldness that shocked everyone around him. At the time, David was not a soldier, nor did he have the armor or weapons that the Israelite warriors carried. His only concern had been delivering food and supplies to his brothers, who were serving in King Saul's army. But when David arrived at the camp, he found the army paralyzed with fear at Goliath's challenge. David heard the taunts of Goliath and saw the soldiers retreating in fear, and his immediate reaction was one of disbelief. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David asked, angered by the blasphemy and the mockery of Israel's God. Unlike the soldiers who had grown accustomed to Goliath's daily threats, David could not stand idly by and let this giant continue to mock the God he loved. To David, this wasn't just a fight for Israel's survival, it was a battle for the honor of God himself. Despite his youth and inexperience, David was resolute. He approached King Saul, offering to take on Goliath himself. Saul, initially skeptical, tried to dissuade David, arguing that the young shepherd was no match for such a seasoned warrior. "You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior since his youth," Saul said. But David was unwavering in his faith. He told Saul that he had defended his father's flock from lions and bears, and that the same God who had delivered him from those wild animals would deliver him from Goliath as well. David's faith wasn't in his own abilities. He was confident that God would give him the victory. So Saul finally agreed and clothed David in his own armor. But David quickly realized that he was not accustomed to such heavy protection. He removed the armor, choosing instead to face Goliath in his simplest attire, his shepherd's clothes, and a sling. David took 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream, placing them in his pouch, and with nothing more than his sling, he set out to face the giant. When David approached Goliath, the Philistine mocked him, laughing at the sight of a boy coming to fight him. But David, undeterred, boldly declared that while Goliath came with sword, spear, and javelin, he came in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel's armies. David's faith in God's power, not in his own strength, became the foundation of his courage. With a single stone from his sling, David struck Goliath in the forehead, bringing the giant to the ground. David's victory was not just over Goliath, it was a triumph of faith over fear, reminding all who witnessed it that when God is with you, no challenge is too great. David's victory over Goliath is a profound reminder of the power of faith in God to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. When David faced Goliath on the battlefield, it wasn't his physical strength or advanced weaponry that gave him the upper hand. It was his unwavering belief that God would fight alongside him. While Goliath stood towering over him in full armor, with a massive spear and shield bearer in tow, David was armed with only a simple sling and 5 smooth stones. To the onlookers, it seemed impossible for a young shepherd to defeat such a fearsome giant. But David's confidence in God's power made all the difference. Before he even stepped onto the battlefield, David had already made it clear that this battle was not his own, but God's. He boldly declared to Goliath, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." This wasn't just a statement of his confidence in himself. It was an affirmation of his belief that God would deliver the victory. David wasn't relying on his own strength or abilities, but on the power and faithfulness of God, who had always protected him in the past and would continue to do so. David's words showed the stark contrast between the way he and Goliath viewed the battle. Goliath saw it as a test of strength, weapons, and combat experience, but David saw it as a battle for the honor of God. He understood that no matter how intimidating Goliath appeared, no matter how heavy the armor or how massive the spear, nothing could stand against the power of the Lord. His faith was the key that unlocked his courage. As David approached Goliath, the giant mocked him, deriding him for being just a young boy. Yet David was undeterred. With a sling in hand, he confidently took aim and hurled a stone toward Goliath's forehead. The stone sank deep into the giant's skull, and with a resounding thud, Goliath fell to the ground. David's victory was not just a victory for Israel. It was a victory for faith. The God of Israel had proven his power and faithfulness by delivering David from the hands of the most terrifying enemy. What made this victory even more remarkable was that it wasn't achieved through brute force or military strategy, but through divine intervention. David didn't need armor, a sword, or a shield. He needed only his faith in God, and through that faith, God gave him the strength to conquer Goliath. This event serves as a powerful reminder to all that with God, we can face any challenge, no matter how great, and emerge victorious. After Goliath's defeat, the battle against the Philistines didn't end with just one giant falling. In fact, Goliath's death marked the beginning of a continued struggle, as his brothers and other giants from the Philistine camp sought to avenge him. The Bible tells us that Goliath had several brothers, some of whom were also formidable warriors in their own right. In 2 Samuel 21:19, the story unfolds that one of Goliath's brothers, named Ishbi-benob, rose up to fight against Israel. Like his fallen brother, Ishbi-benob was a giant, armed with a spear so heavy that it weighed around 300 shekels of bronze. This weapon was far too large for a normal man, emphasizing the strength and stature these giants possessed. Ishbi-benob, believing that David was growing weaker and more vulnerable, set his sights on killing him. Despite the odds, God's intervention once again saved David. As Ishbi-benob prepared to strike, Abishai, one of David's mighty men, came to David's rescue. Abishai was a warrior of great courage and strength, and he didn't hesitate to step in when he saw that David was in danger. With his own skill and God's guidance, Abishai struck down Ishbi-benob, preventing him from killing David. This act of bravery highlighted the importance of loyalty, support, and divine help. Even though David was known as the great warrior who had defeated Goliath, he was not invincible. He too faced moments of weakness, and it was in those times that God sent help through his loyal warriors like Abishai. This victory over Ishbi-benob didn't just showcase the physical strength of Abishai, but also a deeper lesson about God's faithfulness in times of need. David, though mighty in battle, was not alone in his struggles. God provided him with the support he needed to continue his mission and protect the people of Israel. The defeat of Ishbi-benob was a testament to the fact that no matter how strong or imposing the enemy, God's power and his providence would always be with Israel, especially in their time of greatest need. This pattern continued throughout David's reign, as the Philistines sent forth more giants to challenge Israel. Each time, God's faithful warriors rose to protect the kingdom and uphold his honor. Even though Goliath's brothers and their kin were incredibly strong and intimidating, they were ultimately defeated, just as Goliath had been. These victories were not just about defeating physical enemies, but about reaffirming the truth that Israel's strength was not in their numbers, weapons, or giants, but in their unwavering faith in God. Each victory strengthened their resolve and reminded them that with God on their side, no challenge was too great to overcome. The idea that Goliath and his brothers might have been Nephilim is a fascinating concept that sparks much debate among scholars and theologians. The Nephilim are mysterious figures mentioned in the Bible, particularly in Genesis 6:1-4, where it is said that the sons of God came down to earth and had children with the daughters of men, resulting in the birth of giants, the Nephilim. These beings were described as the mighty men of old, men of renown, implying they were not just physically imposing but also had a great reputation and power. While the Bible does not explicitly call Goliath and his brothers Nephilim, some scholars suggest that they might be linked to this ancient race of giants, and there are a few compelling reasons for this connection. First, Goliath was from the city of Gath, which, according to biblical texts, was once home to a group of giants known as the Anakim. The Anakim were often associated with the Nephilim and were said to be descendants of the giants who roamed the earth before and after the flood. The fact that Goliath came from Gath, a city historically connected to the Anakim, strengthens the idea that he might have been a Nephilim, or at least descended from them. Additionally, Goliath's size and strength were extraordinary, far beyond what would be typical for a normal human. With a height of nearly 9 feet, 9 inches in armor that weighed over 200 pounds, Goliath's physical characteristics were consistent with descriptions of the Nephilim, who were often depicted as beings of great stature and power. Another point that suggests Goliath's connection to the Nephilim is the way his family, including his brothers, continued to appear in the Bible as mighty warriors. In 2 Samuel 21:19-22, several of Goliath's brothers, who were also giants, are mentioned. These individuals, like Goliath, possessed extraordinary strength and size, with weapons that were larger and heavier than those of typical soldiers. For instance, one of Goliath's brothers had a spear with a shaft described as being like a weaver's beam, emphasizing its immense size and strength. The fact that Goliath's family members were also giants further supports the idea that they might have belonged to the same race of beings as the Nephilim. However, not everyone agrees with this interpretation. Some scholars believe that Goliath and his brothers were simply large, powerful men with genetic conditions like gigantism, which could explain their extraordinary size. Others argue that the Nephilim were destroyed in the flood, and Goliath and his family were likely just warriors of remarkable strength without any supernatural lineage. While there is no definitive answer, the possibility that Goliath and his brothers could have been Nephilim adds an intriguing layer of mystery to their story and raises questions about the existence of these ancient giants. In any case, whether Goliath and his family were Nephilim or not, their story serves as a powerful reminder of the challenges faced by the people of Israel and the ultimate triumph of faith over fear. Goliath's size and strength, regardless of his origins, were not enough to prevent him from being defeated by a young boy armed only with a sling and faith in God. This story continues to inspire believers to trust in God's power, knowing that no matter the size of the challenges they face, God is greater. The story of David and Goliath is often seen as a victory of strength and courage, but it's important to recognize that it also teaches a deeper lesson about the power of faith and trust in God. David, a young shepherd boy with no military experience, faced Goliath, a giant warrior armored head to toe, with nothing but a sling and 5 smooth stones. The physical disparity between them was enormous, But David's confidence didn't come from his own abilities or his weapons. It came from his unwavering faith in God's power. This is a crucial lesson for all of us. When we face seemingly impossible challenges in life, we can draw strength not from our own resources, but from our trust in God's guidance and strength. David didn't see Goliath as a threat because of his size, strength, or weaponry. Instead, he saw a giant who had defied the armies of the living God. David understood that the real battle was not against Goliath's physical might, but against the defiance of God's will. This was a battle for the honor of God, and David believed that with God on his side, there was no obstacle too great to overcome. While the entire Israelite army, including King Saul, was terrified and paralyzed by fear, David's faith gave him the courage to stand firm, armed only with his simple tools and a heart full of trust in God. David's victory was not just a triumph of skill or bravery, it was a triumph of faith. When he confronted Goliath, he didn't hesitate or doubt. He boldly declared, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." This declaration was a powerful reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, faith in God can provide the strength needed to overcome anything. David didn't rely on armor, military strategy, or even physical prowess. He relied on the belief that God was with him, and that was enough to defeat the giant. The story of David and Goliath is more than just about a young boy defeating a giant. It's a reminder that we all face giants in our lives, whether they are personal struggles, fears, or seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Just as David trusted in God's strength to face his giant, we too can find the courage and resilience to face our challenges when we place our faith in God. David's victory teaches us that, no matter how big or intimidating the giants are in our lives, with God on our side, we can overcome anything. It's a message of hope, courage, and the reminder that faith is the key to facing life's greatest challenges. The story of Goliath and his brothers is not just about the defeat of a giant. It's a powerful reminder of the resilience and strength that comes from unwavering faith, even in the face of our greatest challenges. Goliath's brothers, like the giant himself, were formidable warriors, and their continued presence in the story symbolizes the ongoing struggles that we all face in life. Even after Goliath was defeated, the battle didn't end. The Israelites faced more giants, each one a reminder that challenges in life can be relentless. Just as David had to continue fighting in the face of these giants, we too must be prepared to face our own trials and adversities. However, the lesson we can take from David's story is that no matter how many times we are knocked down or how many giants we face, we can overcome them with faith. David's victory over Goliath didn't end with the battle itself. It marked a turning point for the entire nation of Israel. The Israelites were no longer paralyzed by fear. They gained confidence, knowing that with God's help, anything was possible. In the same way, when we face obstacles, whether they be personal, professional, or emotional, our faith can be the strength that propels us forward. In life, we all encounter giant situations or problems that seem too big to handle. Maybe it's a difficult relationship, a health issue, or a financial burden. Sometimes, these challenges feel so overwhelming that we're tempted to retreat, just as the Israelite army did at the sight of Goliath. But David's story shows us that it's not about how big our giants are. It's about how big our faith is. When we place our trust in God, and remember that we are not alone in our struggles, we can face even the most daunting challenges with courage and hope. David's faith didn't make the giant disappear instantly. It took courage, action, and trust in God's plan. Similarly, when we face our own giants, overcoming them may not be easy or immediate. But the strength to fight and the courage to stand tall comes when we remember that we are not fighting alone. David's victory is a timeless reminder that with faith, determination, and trust in God, we can conquer the seemingly impossible. Whether it's a giant in our lives or a series of smaller struggles, we can find strength in the lessons of this ancient story. Just as David's faith led him to victory, so too can our faith lead us through any challenge life throws our way.